This is an ACU Centre for Liturgy podcast. Speaking of liturgy.
What were some of the key liturgical considerations following the tragic fire of the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris? Speaking of liturgy, Rev Gilles Drouin, director of the Institut Supérieur de Liturgie at the Institut Catholique de Paris and part of the liturgical refurbishment advisory team, describes the restoration approach and highlights some of the liturgical issues involved.
Paradoxically, the tragedy of the 15th of March 2019 provided the Paris Diocese with an opportunity to rethink the liturgical layout of Notre Dame Cathedral. The team appointed by the Archbishop to look into the matter began with a wide-ranging survey, which confirmed that the 2004 layout put in place by Cardinal Liturgie was generally satisfactory. After several temporary arrangements, where, as was often the case at the time, an altar was installed on a podium at the transept crossing, in 2004 the Vatican II Council Sanctuary at Notre Dame was reunited with the prestigious but underused space of the former Canon's Choir following the liturgical reform. This arrangement, adapted to large-scale conservation, restored a part of the transept to the faithful and gave the architectural choir back its liturgical luster. However, a few adjustments were made to the ergonomics of the ambo, to the location of the tabernacle, now clearly separated from that of the reliquary of the crown of thorns, and to the cathedral, which was restored after the Archbishop was installed in a dignified style following the 2004 refurbishment. The question of whether or not to rebuild the emblematic altar by Jean Touret, Cardinal Lustigé's artist, was initially set aside, but successive archbishops have all been sensitive to its non-acceptance by some of the clergy. Hence, the final decision to commission a new altar, but on the exact same site as the previous one, on an identically rebuilt plateau. Once these issues had been settled, the next step was to rethink the overall economic of space in a building that had been described from the outset as entirely Catholic and therefore open to all. Not only is Notre Dame Cathedral a major liturgical site, it also welcomed 12 million visitors a year and perhaps 15 million after the reopening, more than double the number at the time of the 2004 redevelopment. The decision was made early on not to reserve an intimate space for liturgy, but to continue to celebrate even on weekdays at the main altar amid the uninterrupted flow of visitors. It's an important choice, one that has never been called into question, and one that aims to order the entire space according to its liturgical purpose, avoiding any separation between spaces reserved for worship and spaces in the process of being museumized. This point was decisive for the rest of the reflection process. On the other hand, Archbishop Michel Aupetit has explicitly asked us to think about the layout from the nave upwards, and not just from the liturgical plateau, with a real sensitivity to the question of the link between baptismal priesthood and priestly ministry, and to think about how to accompany with a missionary concern the visitor we wish to continue to welcome widely and free of charge. The stakes are high in symbolic and missionary terms, but also in terms of their consequences. In a secular country such as ours, there is a great risk of reducing the liturgical layout of the cathedral to the choice of an altar, ambo, and presider on the liturgical platform, with everything else being the responsibility of the heritage authorities linked to the states that owns the building. This is what we wanted to avoid in Paris. The entire space, including nave, aisles, chapels, and ambulatory, was designed around the cathedral liturgical heart. The design is based on two interrelated systems. First, a liturgical axis stretching from its baptismal source with a large baptistry at the entrance of the cathedral to its Eucharist heart with the altar and the beyond liturgy manifested in Notre Dame by Marc Couturier's Great Cross of Glory and the Oriental Tabernacle. In this way, the nave is now embedded between the two major sites of Christian liturgy, baptism and Eucharist. We would have liked to have gone further in this distancing from the theatrical model of face-to-face between the stage and the mass of strangers and mute spectators, to use Sacrosanctum's Concilium's expression, but this was not possible. Second system, a pilgrimage path conceived as a diffraction of the liturgical axis to accompany visitors who enter through the central portal and are thus immediately sized by the major liturgical axis, strolling from north to south, from darkness to light. This path will follow on an allée de la promesse along the North Chapel, each dedicated to a major figure from the Old Testament. Then after the transept, an allée de l'Incarnation along the reliefs depicting the infancy of Christ in the choir enclosure, then the turning point of the path with the reliquary of the crown of thorns reinstalled in the axial chapel, followed by the alley of the resurrection along the eponymous reliefs to the south of the choir, and finally, after the statue of Notre Dame, Mother of Christ and Mother of the Church, an alley of the saints along the south chapels, each dedicated to a saintly figure from Paris. This is not a catechesis, sensu stricto, but rather a way of accompanying visitors to the threshold to the mystery for which the cathedral was built, and without a minimum understanding of which it is impossible to understand the building, especially with visitors of a predominantly post-Christian or non-Christian culture. The proposal is more initiatory than catechetical, and with an aesthetic and sensory dimension, as well as proposals for places of devotion and some sacramental proposals, in particular reconciliation. A series of contemporary stained glass windows will give substance to the Alley of Saints in the south aisle. Last but not least, particular attention was paid to the lighting of the building, with a view to overcoming the divide between liturgical lighting, which only concerned the plateau, and lighting of other spaces, including the nave, which is mainly dedicated to heritage enhancement. Here too we wanted and obtained the liturgy to be in charge, soft lighting favoring natural light as much as possible, lighting with adjustable temperatures according to the time and type of liturgical celebration, and the lighting designed to make the pilgrimage itinerary intelligible. Thus, the program implemented under the authority of two successive archbishops is a fruit of the global reflection with an organic approach to all the spaces entirely dedicated to the cathedral liturgical vocation, while at the same time addressing in a differentiated way the faithful and tourists, two populations that we have always refused to separate given the multiple and changing motivations of our visitors. The choice of furnishings was a secondary issue, but not a secondary one. Once the major space-saving choices had been made, Archbishop Michel Aupetit wanted to avoid the competition and asked a team of artists to work on a co-construction project for the main elements of the furniture in line with the overall project. His successor, Archbishop Laurent Ulrich, wished to organize a competition to appoint the sole designer of the 5 essential pieces, altar, ambo, cathedral, baptistry, and the tabernacle. It chose designer Guillaume Bardet's project, featuring bronze objects with supple, uncluttered forms.
That was Father Gilles Drouin describing aspects of the liturgical refurbishment of the Notre-Dame de Paris Cathedral following the tragic fire of 2019.
The ACU Centre for Liturgy, which provides pastoral formation in liturgy across Australia and beyond, is pleased to provide this podcast, Speaking of Liturgy.